Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mazur, I heard you mention something a while ago that seems to be a typical political talking point, and that is there are corporations in America that do not pay any taxes. Do you think they're doing anything illegal?
I don't know. The situation, I do know that they're taking full advantage of the laws and shifting income to other tax jurisdictions. And they're taking advantage of the tax incentives that are provided, whether they, Mr. Grothman was talking about some of the tax credits that they have available or the deductions that they have available.
And so do you think that's wrong, that they take advantage of?
So Congress used to have an alternative minimum tax for corporations, and part of the reason for having an alternative minimum tax was that it provided a backstop. It said, no matter how many deductions or credits you get,
Mr. Mazur, thank you for that. Have you ever paid alternative minimum tax?
Yes, I paid alternative minimum tax many times.
Yes. And you recognize that the reason that one would pay that is because there was no income in the first place. I mean,
No, that's not true. I paid alternative minimum tax personally when my income was probably around $200,000 a year, similar to your income. And it was because I had a lot of state and local taxes that are not allowed as a deduction under the alternative minimum tax.
I can tell you as a business person, I've paid lots of alternative minimum in tax, and it's because there was no income. And I believe that's what is the case with most businesses out there today. The goal of every business is to have income to be able to pay taxes. Would you not also agree that even those companies that do not generate income to the level to pay the income taxes that you might want them to pay do pay Social Security taxes, they do pay FICA taxes, they do pay property taxes, they do pay unemployment taxes. There's still plenty of taxes out there for those companies that have not generated the income to pay. You do recognize.
Agreed. They pay a whole range of taxes. I agree with that.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Pomerleau, the TCJA reduced the federal corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. What did that do for international competitiveness?
So, as I described in my testimony, prior to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the U.S. had the highest statutory tax rate in the developed world. And the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act brought that down to roughly about average. That had a couple benefits sort of internationally. So the first one is that it reduced the incentive for corporations to locate their profits in low tax jurisdictions. The amount a company can save depends on the differential in tax rates, and when the US had a very high tax rate and other jurisdictions had lower rates, companies could save more by shifting overseas. And the second benefit is it also reduced the incentive to locate intellectual property offshore as well. When a company is deciding where to place a highly mobile asset, they're going to ask themselves, all right, where can I get the highest after-tax return on this investment? And a lot of that is determined by the statutory tax rate that the U.S. levies, and bringing that down also discouraged companies from shifting those abroad.
As any CEO would do, they're trying to generate income for their shareholders, their owners, and so I appreciate you calling attention to the fact that if we want more American jobs, if we want more investment in the United States as opposed to places like China, then we need to create the environment for them to do that. Thank you very much. Mr. Kuhlman, what did the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 do for small businesses?
I think from an overall environment, the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act combined with some of the emphasis on reducing regulations, we saw small business optimism at or near all-time highs right before the pandemic. Of course, the pandemic turned everything upside down. But business owners took the benefits and just reinvested it back in the business. According to a survey we did in 2019, 1 in 4 increased compensation, nearly identical number increased business investment, 16% hired new employees, 20% paid down debt. Overall, they plowed it back into the business or their obligations for the overall economic benefit of the
Thank you.
small
One more question I'd like to get to before I run out of time. 32% of small business owners reported raising their selling prices. Would raising taxes help the inflation that Americans are already experiencing today?
Short answer, no.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chair, I see I'm out of time. I yield back.